Welcome back. So today we're going to talk about the first two steps of design thinking, empathy and defining the problem. So what is empathy? Why is it important to design thinking? And why do we need it to solve the right kind of problem? Before we can solve a problem, we first need to learn more about the problem from the people who experience it directly. We then need to use that information to reframe and define what the problem is before we brainstorm ways to solve it. It can be tempting to jump straight to solutions and ideation to a problem, but these first two steps, empathy and define, are crucial to making sure that we understand what problem we are trying to solve. The best way to understand empathy is to see it as something distinct from sympathy. Brené Brown is an expert in the areas of empathy and vulnerability. She defines empathy as the ability to feel with someone rather than for someone's situation. To hear Brown's description of what makes empathy different from sympathy, please watch this short video. With Brown's definition of empathy in mind, let's look at how we empathize in an empathy interview. The first thing we need to do is put aside our own egos, because this can get in the way of hearing good ideas that may not be our own. The second is to encourage storytelling. Ask your partner to say more about that. Can you repeat that? Ask one open-ended question at a time to avoid confusing your partner. You want to listen more than you talk. This is important for you to actually observe, what is this person doing? How is the person doing that? Why is this person doing that? So taking inferences or surprising insights away from the behavior that you're observing. And finally, you want to be an active listener. So what does an active listener look like? In an empathy interview, your main goal in listening to your partner is to understand their problem, need, or pain point. Sometimes this means staying silent. Other times it means asking deeper questions. Your job is not to judge, but to notice the various ways in which people tell stories about themselves. So who do we want to empathize with? The best place to start is with extreme users. These are the people most directly impacted with the problem that you're tackling. So for example, in an air travel design challenge might include extreme users such as a family flying with young children, someone who is scared of flying, someone who needs wheelchair services. Today, all of you are extreme users. You're all facing challenges, and you're going to talk about one of these challenges with another person today. So before we break into pairs, we're going to try out these skills by doing an empathy interview with one member of your team. This is an opportunity to engage with people on a deeper level, to get personal stories that will help you identify a problem before you begin solving it. Your guiding question in this will be, how might I design a tool to help this person directly with a problem they're facing using a product, service, or system in their everyday lives? It may be helpful to recall the shopping cart video. In this case, one person you might want to interview is a parent about their experience putting their child in this cart, or a worker who has to collect the carts from the parking lot. There are at least 3 levels to every story. There's the explicit surface, what is visible level. There's the implicit backdrop to what the person is saying. And then there's the meaning, which is what you are interested in your interviews. What matters to this person? What problem do they want to solve? The challenge here is that we often embed meaning beneath the surface of the stories we tell. This is why we want to encourage people to tell stories and why we need to listen actively to them. We're going to try this with the 3 levels of conversation depth to get at meaning. by doing an empathy interview with one member of your team. This is an opportunity to engage with people on a deeper level, to get personal stories that will help you identify a problem before you try to solve it. To get the deeper story, we want to keep the focus on the speaker. Now, one way to do that is by asking follow-up questions and not dominating the conversation. The second is to ask broader why questions to keep the focus on the speaker. And you want to be sure that when you listen, you're not judging or introducing your own experience into the interview. So we're going to break into pairs, and you're going to follow the empathy map guidelines on your handout. So you want to briefly describe to your partner a problem or a challenge that you have with a product, a process, or a service that you use often or daily. You want to ask open-ended questions that will help your partner talk about the specific problem they're facing and what they still need in order to solve it. Your goal is to get at this deeper meaning beneath the surface. This person may not even know yet that it exists. Here are some questions that you might want to ask to encourage this person to get at this meaning. Tell me about a typical day for you right now. What's something you are trying to achieve? What is getting in your way of this goal? And what would help you achieve this goal? There are other sample questions available on the empathy map handout. So using your handout as a guide, you want to fill in your blank empathy map as you're listening. You can also do this after you do your interview and take notes. You want to collect information from the person you're interviewing, paying specific attention to what they say, think, do, and feel. And as you add information to each quadrant, your empathy map will eventually look something like this. Once you've placed the information from your interview onto the blank map, you want to be thinking about the things that stand out to you in these interviews. So I think we're ready to give this a try. In your pairs, decide who will begin describing a specific need or challenge with a product, system, or service that you use daily. While this person is talking, the listener will ask questions and take notes on what the person is thinking, seeing, feeling, and doing in order to understand a challenge, pain point, or need they face right now. After 3 minutes, you will switch roles with your partner and repeat the process from the opposite perspective. The next thing we need to do in order to solve this person's problem is to reframe it as a single problem, and one that is not a tame or gravity problem we can't fix, but that has actionable and clear steps to a solution. So to do this, we are going to come together in groups of 4. As a group, if you have an odd number, you can have one group of 5. As a group, you're going to select the problem from the group, from the 4 of you, that you want to design for. In order to make a productive brainstorming session, you need to make sure you framed a specific need with an actionable solution moving forward. So this may seem obvious, but it can be trickier than you might think. One way to save time is to go back to the verb or need that the one person in your group has and ask them about it. You want to make sure that you don't frame the question so broadly that there's no clear starting point. It shouldn't be anchored on a single solution, because what we'll be doing next is coming up with multiple solutions. You want to make sure that you're asking the right question before we begin to ideate. A strong problem statement or question starts with a phrase like this. How might we help, the name of the person that you interviewed, find a better way to their specific need or actionable need or problem in order to, and then the surprising insight that you came up with when you did your empathy map. So these well-framed questions will allow for the most creative and innovative ideas in the next stage of the design process, which is ideation. Let me give you an example. Recall our IDEO example, David Kelly talking about the MRI machine. And here's a problem statement reframe that would have been asked of the doctor before he solved the problem. So before the ideation section. How might we help Dr. Smith find a better way to design the MRI machine as a fun experience? Because in order to, and this is probably the most challenging part, to make his patients less frightened and more entertained during this experience. Because this really was one of the insights that the doctor took away that made him think about a pirate ship adventure. So now it's your turn. You're going to create a how might we statement with your group. In groups of 4, you're going to choose one problem, need, or actionable pain point from your empathy interviews. Sometimes there is overlap and you can actually create a new one based on the overlaps that you're seeing. But using your empathy map for this person, you want to construct a how might we statement to describe this problem as clearly and succinctly as you can. Once your group feels good about the statement, write it down in this format and then bring it with you to our next ideation session. Once you've completed your problem statements, before we go, let's share some takeaways from these empathy interviews, such as learning to listen actively and openly, staying flexible and empathetic, and being willing to reframe your question and change your mind at any point of the process. What were your takeaways? What did you learn from your empathy interview?